On the news, blackout hits many parts of Nigeria as the national grid collapses for 8th time in 2022. Social media big boy John Leon Ewa paraded by Bayelsa police for alleged kidnapping. And retired soldiers storm Defense Ministry protest unpaid allowances. Well, glad to have you join us on News Now. I am Mary Kanu. For the 8th time this year, Nigerians have been thrown into blackout as the national grid suffered a fresh system collapse. Major electricity distribution companies in different notices to customers said the national grid collapsed at about 11 a.m. According to the distribution companies, the system collapse of the national grid has affected the transmission stations and resulted in the loss of power supply to customers. While the grid collapse in Benin Electricity Distribution Company caused disruption in power supply and the coverage area, which include Delta, Edo, Ekiti and Ondo, the Enugu Electricity Distribution Company said the system collapse caused outage in the entire southeast states of Anambra, Enugu, Abia, Imo and Ebonyi. The Bayelsa Police Command has paraded John Leon Ewa, the alleged kidnap kingpin, and 3 other members of his syndicate. Speaking with journalists, Ewa said he is not the leader of the group, adding that he was only paid 1.5 million naira for showing the kidnappers the houses of victims. Ewa was said to have been arrested following the kidnap of Danjuma Omeje, a bank manager in Yenagoa who was said to be his former boss. The suspect, who flaunts wealth on social media, is believed to be involved in several kidnap incidents around Yenagoa, the state capital. According to police reports, some other persons who are members of the gang are still at large. And now to electoral matters. The campaigns for the 2023 general elections are already here, and the Independent National Electoral Commission has warned political parties against hate speeches and abusive expressions. INEC Chairman Mahmood Yakubu made the call during a 2-day capacity building workshop for INEC Press Corps members on critical issues in the Electoral Act of 2022, the Commission's processes, innovations and preparations for the 2023 general elections in Lagos. Represented by the National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, the INEC boss urged over-registered parties to pay keen attention to the provisions of the Constitution, the Electoral Act, the Police Act and the Public Order Act. Our correspondent Emeka Amako compiled this report from Abuja.
It's the critical phase in the electoral process, and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is leaving nothing to chance towards a seamless, free, fair and credible 2023 general elections. To this end, the electoral umpire has organized this training session for journalists in Lagos with focus on fair coverage of the electoral process and equal representation of all political parties.
As first-hand witnesses to the activities of the Commission, the INEC Press Corps is supposed to be the repository of electoral information in Nigeria. This places them in an advantageous position to play a critical role in shaping the opinions and editorial policies of their media organizations on issues relating to the programs and also relating to the policies of the Commission. The implication of this is that the INEC Press Corps must be familiar with the constitutional mandate of the Commission and the roles and powers ascribed to the Commission by both the Constitution, the Electoral Act, and our regulations and guidelines.
With about 152 days left for the 2023 elections, stakeholders are expecting the media to play its watchdog roles and shun corruption that could smear its image.
The media, in its pursuit to ensure that the rule of law prevails, must not in itself become lawless. From both the developing and developed societies, the media has the power to impose its decisions, its views, and opinions on the rest of society. The media dictates public taste, decides what the public should know, how and when it should be known, and decide what is fair enough for public consumption. Also, it is the role of the media to ensure that the principles of fairness and balance in the coverage of political party campaigns and activities are observed.
An EU-financed project for 5 years, and we will work over these 5 years with INEC to assist with whatever the needs are to help them to organise a good election. And there's a lot of challenges out there. There is a lot of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, you have it. Since a certain president of the United States held office, everything has increased. And you, ladies and gentlemen from the press, are extremely important partners to get a credible election done for Nigerians.
About 59 journalists are attending the workshop and are expected to familiarize themselves with information about the election process for effective dissemination to the public. Simisola Digun, TV360 News.
The Lagos chapter of the Nigeria for Bola Ahmed Tinubu campaign group has commenced its grassroots mobilization with a 1 million rally for the Bola Ahmed Tinubu presidential campaign and Sanwo-Olu for second-term campaign. The mobilization rally, which started with a walk from Alaka area in the state, also served as an inauguration for the state executives and coordinators of the group at the indoor hall of Teslim Balogun Stadium. According to the state coordinator Oyeyemi Ayola, the inauguration of executives was necessary to rally support for the presidential campaign of Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
He has done so much. He paved the way for development. He paved the way for increased revenue. Without revenue, without money, you cannot develop any country. So even for the fact that he was able to move our revenue from 600 million to 50-something million per month, billion per month, from 600 million to 57 billion per month, is enough for us to know that that will galvanize development in Lagos State, because we have money to develop our state, to have infrastructure because of what he has paved. That is in the area of revenue. In the area of education, he paved the way for improvements in providing infrastructure in our universities. We have, even our universities now have been upgraded from polytechnics and college of education to universities. It is a state that is growing and will keep growing. When it comes to infrastructure, it opened up the Lekki axis for development, so many things that he has done. And is the leaders of leaders. Is the one that discover talents and he make them to rise to unimaginable places.
To all the youth, I am calling on them that Bola Ahmed Tinubu has a track record. He has been doing it since 1999. He is still doing it as president, and he will continue to do it. He was the first person to pay for WAEC in Nigeria. He was the first person to employ more than 2,000 youth in year 2000. He was the first person to give everybody that Bola rapid transport. He subsidized transportation and he ensured that youth are empowered by organizing spelling bee. And I would say it to you that one of the outcomes of that spelling bee has produced the current national youth leader of APC, the person of Comrade Bayo Ise.
And military veterans under the aegis of the retired members of Nigerian Armed Forces and the coalition of concerned military veterans have staged the third phase of their protest over the non-payment of their security debarment allowance, among others, at the Ministry of Defense in Abuja on Monday. The protesters pitched a tent and blocked access to the Ministry of Defense located at Chip House on Olusegun Obasanjo Way in the country's capital city. The retired military men had in January this year picketed the Ministries of Finance, Defense and the National Assembly in pursuit of the same demand. The National Secretary of a group, Roy Okidive, who spoke to journalists during Monday's protest, explained that the demonstration was to demand the payment of their security debarment allowance owed them by the federal government.
They have held series of meetings. We have not gotten feedback. We need feedback. We started to write letters. We wrote letters, no feedback. At last, when we found out that they have started to pay serving personnel that are just leaving, we called for a meeting and they agreed for the meeting. We had a meeting with the Honorable Minister of Defense, and he agreed that the structure to pay it within 3 to 5 years is not agreeable. He said he will get back to us. They also said those that are late. We said no. Those that are late must be included because they were captured in the money that was approved by the president. So you should pay it to their families. They also said they will go back and get back to us. All of a sudden, they shut down all the communication lines. All communication lines. They could not even reach us through our numerous avenues. We have the One Star General Association. We have the RANOA, Retired Members of Nigerian Army, Air Force and Navy Association, who are their seniors in service that are also left. They did not communicate. And right now, as we are here now, we are going to be here until we get tangible feedback.
We are the ones in the ministry that wrote to Mr. President to ensure that your SDA is paid. And we want to thank Mr. President because he graciously approved that money. So what I can see as the bone of contention now is that the mode of payments, the implementation of the payments, it is really what is the bone of contention now. I mean, you might not like the communication, but we have been communicating. So I was there at the meeting that day, and he explained that this money has been approved. And then you asked him certain questions and he answered all the questions. And he said that it might take some time for this money to be paid, but we will see how we can ensure that the monies are paid as soon as possible.
And President Muhammadu Buhari has called for more private sector participation in the humanitarian sector in Nigeria. Speaking at a side event at the 77th UN General Assembly hosted by the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, President Buhari emphasized the need for efficient collaboration among stakeholders involved in humanitarian action and disaster mitigation in the country. President Buhari also urged bilateral and multilateral development partners to continue to provide technical support to well-planned policies and programs in the sector.
The government of Nigeria, through the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, its agencies and programs have developed policies, frameworks, programs, and plans that form the foundation necessary to build resilience. Some of these include civil security cooperation in humanitarian action, which created the National Humanitarian Coordination Committee, the development of lead and inclusive future thinking ecosystem coordination framework, and the National Humanitarian Committee Technical Working Group. Other policies, frameworks, programs, and plans that support the Agenda 2030 and resilience building of our citizenry are the National Internally Displaced Persons Policy, the revised National Emergency Management Plan, the National Emergency Flood and Response Plan, the National Policy for Aging for Elderly Persons, the Poverty Reduction Plan, and the revised National Policy on Disability, all aimed at supporting our administration's strategy to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years.
This must be supported by long-term investments to address the drivers and the root causes of crises in the first place and the ensuing fragility. This is at the core of the humanitarian development peace nexus approach. We know that investing in development is the best way to prevent the crisis in the first place. This is where I would like to commend the government of Nigeria for now proactively in its adoption of the triple nexus approach, particularly in relation to those who have been displaced internally and supported by the creation of enabling frameworks and mechanisms.
Culture and tourism media brand Goge Africa and its partners have unveiled the Destination West Africa project, an initiative established to promote tourism within the sub-region. The unveiling, which was held over the weekend in Lagos, had in attendance various tourism experts who identify the barriers that impede intra-Africa travels, tourism, trade and investment in the West Africa sub-region. According to the organizers, the advocacy for intra-Africa tourism will help showcase the beauty of African common heritage, cultural similarities and diversity with one another and the global community. Our correspondent Simisola Adigun has more in this next report.
It's been 50 years since the establishment of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and intra-regional travel is still at a record low. Easy movement of citizens in the sub-region is hindered due to factors such as border challenges during road trips and high cost of air travel. Having identified the gaps in intra-Africa tourism, Goge Africa and its partners have come together to launch the Destination West Africa project, an initiative that will help improve interconnectivity and ultimately encourage Africans to travel within Africa. Industry experts mention high cost of air travel and border challenges as some of the factors hindering intra-Africa tourism. They are advocating for the lowering of these barriers.
All the borders, the experience at SEME is something, is standing alone. It's different from what every other border is offering. And at several panels here in Nigeria and in Ghana, we spoke, we tried pushing, but it will always stop at the conference hall. The African presidents will begin to listen to the doctors of travel and tourism industry. I believe we will take it to the next level.
The launch of the project is made more significant as it coincides with the 2022 World Tourism Day. With the theme Rethinking Tourism, hosts of the event say they will engage with government, policymakers, national tourism boards and stakeholders in host countries.
Nigeria, unfortunately, do not consider tourism as something that should be on the front burner. You understand? So, and that's why tourism is not getting the kind of attention it should get. They're giving it attention, but not much, not enough. And that's why it's usually driven by the private sector. The government usually are supposed to set the enabling environment so that tourism stakeholders and practitioners can thrive in doing their business.
There's a lot of tourist attractions, a lot of places where we share within the coastline. We share a lot. I've been to Elmina Castle. I know what I saw. I've been to the Gambia. I know what I saw. Even Republic of Benin. So we see things happening. Look at Badagry. Why don't you just exploit it? Do you understand? So it depends on how you package it. If you don't package it where you don't give the incentives and they make it attractive, nobody will come. So you have to make it attractive. If you don't make it attractive, it doesn't work.
The tourism industry remains a crucial contributor to economic growth and social development. It is therefore imperative to boost the sector in West Africa as a regional economic community.
It's a big business, we just don't see it. At every trip I make, I spend money. So will every other person spend money. So will there be income for all the components.
The first leg of the campaign will involve a tour of 4 West African countries: Benin, Togo, Ghana and Ivory Coast, while the second leg will span Gambia, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Liberia and Guinea. Each leg of the project will take a minimum of 2 weeks. Simisola Adigun, TV360, Lagos.
Well, we'll take a break here, but still to come, CBN Monetary Policy Committee holds a bi-monthly meeting to decide on interest rate. We'll bring you details of the story and more right after this break. Welcome back. Now here is a recap of some of our top stories tonight. For the 8th time this year, Nigerians have been thrown into blackout as the national grid suffered a fresh system collapse. Major electricity distribution companies in different notices to customers said the national grid collapsed at about 11 a.m. According to the distribution companies, the system collapse of the national grid has affected the transmission stations and resulted in the loss of power supply to customers. We also told you that the Bayelsa Police Command has paraded John Leon Elwa, the alleged kidnap kingpin, and 3 other members of his syndicate. Speaking with journalists, Elwa said he is not the leader of the group, adding that he was only paid 1.5 million naira for showing the kidnappers the houses of victims. Elwa was said to have been arrested following the kidnap of Danjuma Omeje, a bank manager in Yenugwa who was said to be his former boss. Well, in case you missed any of the news bulletin or for more updates, do log on to our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube and Google Plus at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we're at TV360 Online. And now to COVID-19 updates. Over 2 years since it was first implemented, Hong Kong will scrap its controversial COVID-19 hotel quarantine policy for all arrivals from September 26, 2022. Authorities say all international arrivals will be able to return home or to accommodation of their choice, but will have to self-monitor for 3 days. They are also allowed to go to work and school, but barred from bars and restaurants within the 3 days, and still need to do multiple COVID-19 tests in the first week after arriving. We'll take another break and return with business updates, so stay with us. Welcome back. Abisola Adebayo now joins us for business updates. Abisola, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Welcome to business. One of the high points in the world of business this week is the bi-monthly meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, holding on Monday and Tuesday. The MPC, which will look into global market conditions as well as inflationary pressures, at its last meeting raised the monetary policy rate to 14% to tame rising inflation. While the outcome of the MPC meeting will be disclosed by the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, the decision to either tighten, loose or hold will set the pace for crucial economic decisions until the next MPC. Anyways, to speak more on the development, Segun Shokbiton, who is a business and financial consultant, joins me on the news now. Thank you very much for joining us. Let me start by asking, at the last MPC meeting, the monetary policy rate, which measures interest rate, was raised from 13 to 14% to tame rising inflation. How would you rate that decision now, especially as the inflation rate has risen from 20.52% in August?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So basically, at least for me and for some conservative analysts, I'm not very sure that in our situation in Nigeria that raising the MPR rate does much to tame inflation, primarily because a lot of the factors that drive inflation in Nigeria have to do with the cost push element rather than the money supply issue per se. So yes, you can increase your monetary policy rate, and that will have some impact on inflation because, of course, it will constrain availability of funds in the banking industry, and the rest of the argument with regards to liquidity, which is supposed to drive inflation down. But as we have seen, monetary policy rate was increased significantly, 100 basis points, and here we are. 2 months down the line, we've had 2 successive months of increasing inflation in spite of that. Of course, some people will tell you that there's a lagging effect to some of these policy pronouncements, and therefore the impact of increasing the monetary policy rate by the CBN 2 months ago may not be seen until another couple of months down the line. But I think that more needs to be done beyond just increasing the monetary policy rate.
Okay, now, so what would you expect the committee, what would you think will be the result of the committee meeting between today and tomorrow?
If you look at the various indicators, especially given the fact that we've recorded successive quarters of GDP growth that are above 3%. We recorded 3.52, I think it was for Q2 2022. This may encourage the MPC that there's still a bit of a window to play in terms of the trade-off between taming inflation and not stifling growth. So I suspect that based on just that argument alone, we may see them further nudging NPR up slightly. So maybe a 50 basis points increase to 14.5 is probably what we'll see.
Right, Segun Shokwiton, business consultant, thank you so much for your time and your contributions on the news. Anyways, we'll take a break now and return with a review of the stock market. Nigeria's equities market on Monday defied most analyst expectations of bearish start to the new week thanks to investors who bought shares of Nigerian Exchange Group, FCMB Bank and other top advancers today. At the close of trading, the all-share index increased by 0.39% to close at 49,218 basis points. Market capitalization also appreciated by 88 billion naira to close at 26.5 trillion naira today. Amid improved bargains, Multiverse Mining and Exploration PLC led the gainers counter as it recorded a 28 kobo increase. It is closely followed by financial services giant FCMB Group, which also recorded a 26 kobo increase at the close of trading. On the flip side, as our losers list today, Academy Press and NEM Insurance led the new week's losers table, recording a combined 65 kobo loss. Our market summary sees a total volume of 119 million units of shares valued at 8.5 billion naira, exchanging hands in 3,580 deals, while analysts predict bearish sentiment to dominate the market as expect a rate hike in line with rising inflationary pressures and global monetary hawkish tone by the MPC in its meeting. Accordingly, this will result in an increasing rate in the fixed income market, making the equities market unattractive. But I guess we have to wait and see after the market closed in the positive today. On the foreign scene, London's mid-cap index closed at near 2-year lows on Monday as investors fretted about Britain's new economic plan, but a pound at record lows and gains in consumer staple stocks helped stem falls in the blue chip index. Unfortunately, the Dow Jones and the Nikkei could not manage to keep their heads above water as they recorded a 0.92% decline and 2.66% decline respectively. That's all on stock market reports. Back to Mary for the rest of the news.
Many thanks for the update, Bisola. Moving on now to the global scene. A gunman has opened fire at a school in central Russia, killing at least 15 people and injuring 24. Russia's investigative committee, in a statement on Monday, said all but 2 of the 24 injured people were children. The gunman, who also killed himself at the scene, was identified by the investigative committee as 34-year-old Artyom Kazantesev, who is a graduate of the same school. Meanwhile, rescue and medical workers are underway at the scene. And now in sport, Cesar Oshoala scored her first goal of the season as champions Barcelona trashed Villarreal 4-1 in the second league game of the Spanish women's top flight on Sunday. Oshoala netted in the 48th minute to make it 2-0 after Marpillion had opened the scoring in the 28th minute. The win takes Barcelona to top on the log on 6 points, same points as Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid, but ahead on goals difference. Well, that's the size of a news bulletin this evening. Many thanks for staying with us. I am Mary Kanu. Bye for now.